Okay, just a quick pulse on who's in the room. Who's a designer here? 1, 2. Who's in seminary, works at school, seminary? Okay. Any churches? Church, kind of 2 churches. Okay, business, all right. Sweet. Okay, just now that I know about you guys, just from a wave of show of hands, I'll kind of intro myself. So my name is Beau. I am a strategist planner, so that's super ambiguous, but I basically help bring everyone together and decide what is priority, work with, and so that's my job at Monk. We work primarily with a lot of nonprofits, churches, and ministries, and helping plan digital. And so that's what I do. So AJ, I'll intro the talk after.
And I'm AJ. Work at Monk. I've actually only worked there for the past, I think, 4 months now. Before that, I was in the church as a communication director. Been there for the past 12 years. So my role at Monk is basically I handle the blog, the copywriting, that kind of stuff, and I help churches really think, and nonprofits as well, think about their online website. So best practices, I write ebooks, how to use analytics, that kind of thing. So that's where my time is spent, is helping churches take practical and move it into the digital.
So obviously we're going to tag team this, so we're going to be going back and forth, but I'll give you guys a little intro, or first an agenda, because I'm a planner, so you know what to expect on this. So first we're going to go into the intro, which I'm doing right now. Next we're going to go into who are you? So this is human-centered design, and we could have went into like mission, vision, values, SWOT, like all these terms that people don't really, they don't immediately get what that means. So, who are you? Who are you trying to reach? Pathways, what's out in the wild, convert, relationship, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. We'll probably have about 20 minutes worth of Q&A. But an intro to what we're talking about, and I know you guys are probably coming from a lot of different disciplines, and that's sweet because it takes a lot of different gifts to make projects work. We're going to talk about just from real work. We do this for a living, helping plan this stuff. Areas where we've seen projects have really strong elements and have unclear elements, and once you take away those elements, the project is at the start doomed, and a lot of resources are spent for that project. And so here's our way of working through it, and it all, oddly enough, centers around the person. So it's not, it centers on the person, two people. One is the person you're trying to reach, and the other is who you are. So that's a quick intro. A definition, if we're going to come around this ambiguous human-centered design term, it's a process in which the needs, wants, and limitations of end users of a product, service, or process are given extensive attention at each stage of the design process. And so that doesn't just mean pixel design. That means strategic design. That means rollouts. That means builds. That's not just art. And so human-centered design can be characterized as a multi-stage problem-solving process, and that not only requires designers to analyze and foresee how users are likely to use a product, but also to test the validity of their assumptions with regard to user behavior in real-world tests. And so it's our expertise that if you don't start this way, you're basically just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping things will stick if you don't have a user-centered, human-centered approach. And so this all starts out with a question, and this is a 30,000-foot view. The existential question is, who are you? Sounds extremely simple, but you'd be surprised how many organizations especially do not have clarity among their departments about who they are. So really successful, really thriving organizations. So in particular, if sometimes we work with communications departments, and the communications department, some of the hires may be new, some people may have been around for 5-10 years. Their team does not get together. Their stakeholders don't get together often and know this. So there may have been turnover, big strategic initiatives rolled out, different things that happen over the course of time, months, quarters, years, couple years. I've seen people that think they know who they are, and I get them in a room, all the stakeholders, and they're all saying different things. And that's an issue. That's if you guys don't have clarity on who you are, and there's always this sparks flying every time we talk about it, and a lot of differences. How can you expect other people to know what you're trying to do, who you are? And so, fortunately, I don't just talk about this for a living. I do these projects and I plan. So I'm not just going to talk about theory, because I think some of you guys resonated with that just by the nods. I'm going to also talk to you guys about some practical application to how some things you can do to get clarity on this as well. And so who are you, right? I should have had this slide because it was my supportive imagery the whole time. So who are you? Couple things you can do in this. One, simply do discovery and audit. Who are we? There are a lot of really good frameworks out there. Here's an example of a framework where leading stakeholders through a process, and this doesn't just happen once a decade. This has to be cleared up. This has to drive the mission. Who you are has to be magnetic, and so it has to be worked through regularly. So mission, consequences, values, vision, ideal personas, people, process, how are we going to measure the success? This kind of stuff is extremely important. And a lot of times, though, I think some of you guys may say, okay, that sounds great. I think we talk about that all the time. We have laser clarity. Our mission, we could tell somebody that doesn't have any idea about what we do and is not in the tech space or not in the academic space, and they'll understand it. And it's really clear. But how do we communicate that in different channels? So save that thought. We'll get to that in a little bit. But this, from a high level, this absolutely, if this is missing, nothing else falls into place. It's just basically, like I said, throwing money at the wall. So with that, I'll get into the next. AJ will present the next. Who are you? Now, who are you trying to reach?
And with this, we get into personas, and I don't know how many people have heard of personas before. So we got a couple of you. So the idea of a persona is it's a generalization of your ideal customer, and that can be anything. So it's the people that you're trying to connect with. These are people that are a good fit for your organization, your project that you're moving forward with, and you go about getting this information through surveys, through interviews with people, because this is going to be the basis by which you launch out into other channels. When you're talking on social media, you want to have a clear focus of who you're talking to. With that, one of the things that I've seen is someone comes up with this idea. So we are church for X people. And they have no clue who that X person is. Where do they shop? What social media channels are they on? Do they have kids? Are they above the age of 45? So going into a persona and actually looking at what do they do on the weekends? What are their hobbies? How old are they? Do they have kids? So that when you start creating messages to put on social media, to put on your website, you're communicating to a specific person. And you can target messages and personalize them to whoever that person is. One of the other things I've seen is a health company. So they sell products that make you healthy, or whatever that is. They had two separate messaging, or they had one general message, and it was sent out to everybody, oh, we make you healthy. Well, that didn't really resonate. What they did with the persona, what they could have done is they could have gone in and said, what do moms look for? What do moms, active, healthy, what do they want to say? And create messages, create images on their website, direct people to that page, and kind of create this message or persona-based message so that you're not talking in a general term. You're connecting with someone on a human level, presenting them with information that's tailored to their needs. And then that same health conscious thing could go for seniors. And on that, you're talking about prolonging life, not having to go to the hospital as often. So those aspects of the persona, it's building in and understanding who are you trying to reach? What are their passions? How can you speak into it? What pain points they're having? So that when you start developing a persona, you start to get a better clarity of who you're serving. And the message that you are able to share as a result of that is tailored. It's not a broad, overarching message. It's a clear, focused message to an individual person. And that's where you get into the human-centered. You're actually speaking to pain points that one person has. And so we do that all the time with churches, and we just walk through the different steps. So what are your new visitors? What are your regular attenders doing? Your mature audience? What are their pain points? What are they looking for in a church? And that translates, that's not just something specifically for a church. Anybody can take that type of framework and build out a persona and use that persona to personalize messages to a specific audience.
Yeah, and these personas, there are priorities for personas. I was working with a larger university, and I was talking to their it was their new student department, and so they're in charge of onboarding new students and making them feel welcome. And you guys that work at schools, you're familiar with this. And they had their own little budget that they could run with to make things happen online. And it was paled in comparison to admissions. Like it was like, probably 5% of admissions interactive budget to do stuff online. And through working and identifying, okay, with this school, their ideal persona is this young, you're trying to decide which school to go to, you're comparing schools, here's who we want to reach. And that's their target. On the list as well on personas is, okay, they've converted, they're still kind of in that persona, they converted, now they're in the nurturing, onboarding, assimilation. So they're not necessarily driving admissions. I know that they could probably, if you don't have a good onboarding, they could probably get a refund and go to another school. But it wasn't as big of a priority. Through going through a lot of data, we started seeing some intriguing things. So the percent of newcomer unique visits to that newcomer page, which it is a portal onboarding, was 80%. So a lot of kids were going there to see how they were going to be onboarded and ramped on. And so through going through that persona, identifying, we said, this is admissions right here. So it will justify this. If this is not rich here, and a lot of people are, that's a missed opportunity. So just a little speaking into priorities of audience, because I know through digging a little deeper, stuff can be identified. So talked about personas. The next step is I kind of alluded to it right now, but pathways. And so you have these personas. If everything is a priority for these people, nothing will become a priority. And so we'll get into content a little bit later on, and hopefully you guys will see all this starting to connect from like the existential question to the big planning to a little bit lower to a little bit lower. But pathways is simply what are the critical paths for each person to engage and convert and to get to a place where you could nurture them within your organization. And so a lot of pathway design when I look at projects, and that's the reason they're coming, they need help. But it kind of looks something like this. If you see a guidepost in the road and you're this person and you just interacted with the organization and you're like, where do I go? I have no clue. There's nothing prominent about anything you say that speaks to me. Everything looks like a priority. Everything blends in with each other. So good luck, basically. And so if you know who you are, you know who you're trying to reach. Now, what is the process to engage, attract, engage, and convert, and nurture them? And so that's a little the pain that I see a lot of times. Some practical application is just kind of going through a flow and saying, okay, this looks really big and a lot of words here, but okay, in this audience, for this persona, what is our process? What are we doing? What are our campaigns? What do we have going out there? What is the critical next step for this person? What is critical content that supports this person? What is the primary copy call to action for this person? What is the goal for this person? What is the workflow once they hit the goal? And so it makes sense because a lot of the tools in the digital age did not exist, obviously, 30 years ago. So a lot of being able to track where people are going, automate business processes, these are newer concepts, and so, but identifying, getting clarity for pathways, what you're getting them to do, what is the critical next step, and how you work through nurturing them, absolutely critical. Next thing, so now that you have an understanding of all the high level, low. The next question is, okay, now that we've planned all this, what's out in the wild? So if we're looking at making improvements and we're going through our channels and we're asking these questions, what is this piece of content? Who is it trying to reach? Does it assume prior knowledge for this audience? Is it actionable? Do we have steps to nurture them after they click the call to action? Is the call to action low barrier, high barrier? I just shotgunned a lot of stuff at you. So as you start looking at this stuff, you get clarity. The next question is, what is out in the wild? And a lot of times I see a hoarder type of strategy when it comes to communicating online, which means just throw the maximum amount of content. Don't archive anything. Just hope that if they come into your house, I've never been into a hoarder's house. Has anybody ever been into a hoarder's house before? I would imagine. How do you feel like you see the house, you walk in the door, you're just like,
there's no space to move around.
No space to move around. And you see this with mega navs that have become like crazy. You are expecting the user to read 50 items and you have no context on those items, no buckets on where to put them. It's just like building a hoarder. It's just like having a hoarder house. So you got them to go to your house, but now they don't know what rooms to go to. They don't know where the restroom is. They don't know where the dining table is. They don't know anything. So a practical thing that I would suggest, if you guys have that pain, we have a mass of stuff if we're talking about digital on our website. Good old Abe Lincoln, one of the best digital planners that has ever existed. I'm just kidding. But he said if I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 6 sharpening my axe. So it's just smart to go through and audit. So there's a lot of cool frameworks out there where you could do a series of audits. One is there are quantitative audits. So that's quantity, like let's go down, input everything on our sitemap. Are there things that are 3-4 levels deep? What is the call to action? Who are we trying to reach with this piece of content? Is that documented, or are we just pushing content out all the time? Just feeding the beast in the hoarder house. So who is this content written for? What is a primary call to action? And so auditing is quantitative auditing. Then there is also qualitative auditing. So now that you have that set up, okay, usability, usefulness based on this target, scale 1 to 5. Is this useful at all? You'd be surprised. I've seen organizations cut content after working through stuff like this by 75 to 80%. And it's incredible. And the user enjoys it, and that's human-centered. You're reaching that user. They don't want to go to a hoarder website. So qualitative audit, usability. What is usability? Knowledge. Does this content assume prior knowledge that we're writing to that persona? Actionability. So is there a call to action? Is it prominent? Is it low or high barrier? Am I pushing people to a form that they have to fill out 30 things when I only really need 3? And it would really in this stage of our relationship, it's only appropriate to capture just that thing. And that's the difference between low and high barrier calls to action. So qualitative audits you can do, technology audits you can do, and this is more IT related, but what are we doing? What are all the systems that play into how we're communicating? We have MailChimp for this, we have Wufoo FormStack for that, we have our CRM for this, we have this and this and this. They all have these embed different usabilities and all these different ways to interact. How does everything play together? What is the workflow? How can we get it better? Usability, knowledge, and actionability.
I think when we're talking about this audit, we start moving into looking at content, and you see the hoarder mentality is throw everything up there. When I talked earlier about personas, we're actually saying let's get laser focused on who we're trying to communicate. We don't need to do the hoarder mentality. We can figure out what that specific person needs to know and present it to them. So we're not trying to just shotgun our website, shotgun our social media channels, whatever that aspect is. We're getting really clear and targeting the person. We're only getting them the message that they need to hear. That kind of moves into the next point, which is convert. So at some point, you're going to make an ask. You're going to ask someone to do something. So you're going to ask them to sign up for a form, get more information, come to an event, whatever that aspect is, you're asking them to make a decision. And when it gets into the point where they are either going to do what you've asked them to do or not do what you've asked them to do. And the likelihood of that happening, if you build out personas, if you start targeting them with a direct message that is geared towards them, they have a higher likelihood of converting. Because you're not just throwing information out there. You're asking them to take specific action on something that you've done. So one of the things that I do in my work is we create landing pages. And when someone comes to a landing page, I might put out 3 or 4 tweets. Each of those are directed to a different landing page. And the message inside the tweet talks about specifically to one person. So we have a persona communication person. So when I send out a tweet, I specifically talk about a pain point. I talk about something that we're working on that solves that pain point in language and actions that they understand, so that when it comes time for them to make a decision, it's pretty clear. They already know that I understand what they're looking for, that I have a solution for what they're asking about, and it's whether or not in their mind that has enough value. And so they're converting on that. One of the other things, Beau mentioned it earlier, is you have the hoarder mentality. So there's this test when you're getting people to convert. They did this test. It had, it's kind of funny, how many people have been to Costco and they've had the free samples of food? Everybody's done that. So they did this test, and they put 24 types of jam in front of people. And the idea, so you've heard the jam test? Yeah. So the 24 jams in front of people, and then they were like, okay, so let's test this. How many people convert on that? It was like 3%. So they had the 24 jams, and then they narrowed it down to 6. Anybody, so how many people, do you remember how many people converted? 36%. So they narrowed it down, they got clear, focused. The decision paralysis, they didn't have to figure out everything on their own. It made it clear what the pathways were. And so when you finally get into that, you're helping the people make a decision. You're not throwing them out there to a wall of text and everything like that. You're helping them make that one decision because you've cleared out the clutter, because you care about their time, how much investment you're hoping to get out of this. And that allows you to convert, to have them do what you ask them to do. And
a couple things. Starbucks, I don't know. Well, first, before I say this, at the end of the day, it's about people, and that's what human-centered design is built around. You know, the person. How do you make that person feel? How do you serve that person? Starbucks, I never really got why they were so big, but made me feel like, you know, that I was a person. And so one thing that I started seeing that they do, and they don't do it all the time, probably like 90% of the time. You go in there and you say, I usually get a venti cappuccino, just straight up. And so I get a venti cappuccino and they go, okay, it's gonna be this much, what's your name? They ask me my name. I'm like, Beau. And my name's hard to, you know, people are like Beau, B-O or B-E-A-U. And so they actually take, you guys know this, they write your name down on a cup. They don't have to write my name down on a cup. It's probably kind of potentially inefficient. I'm not sure. I haven't done a case study of why they do this or anything. But then when your drink is ready, they call Beau. And so I have my little neighborhood Starbucks, and I'm like, yeah, you're calling me by my name. That's who I am. I'd say maybe every quarter, and I'm starting to think, is this like their business strategy? They're doing this. The main guy that I see all the time, his name is Ellis. And Ellis is really friendly, and every couple months, when I go to give him my card, he goes, nah, it's on me. And I'm like, that is incredible. Like, I just feel, number one, I'm not used to people buying me drinks. I think girls are probably a lot more. But as a guy, I'm like, that's pretty awesome. I just got comped a drink. And he only has to do it once or twice a year to make me feel like this humongous, multi-billion-dollar organization taking over the world actually cares about me. And that's that human element to what they've built I don't know if they've built those things in. I want to think that he just really thinks I'm a good guy and he wants to, he likes me, but that's that, yeah. So that's that.
That kind of segues into what I'm going to talk about next in relationships.
Yeah.
So once you get someone to convert, that's not the end of the relationship that you're going to have with that person. They're going to experience your product. They're going to hear messages from you. The whole idea is that you're building a relationship with this person. It's not a one-off experience. They're going to have several different, what we call touch points. So that's social media channels, that's your website, that's interactions with someone on the phone. Each of these touch points is going to affect the relationship you have with them. So one of the things I like to share is if the first touch point someone has with your company after converting is support, you failed. You have failed because you're not building a relationship. They're coming to you after they've experienced an issue. How can you build into your process? If you really care about them and the relationship you're building, what would you do to make sure that your first interaction with them after they've made a decision is a good relationship, is a good feeling? So that is trying to figure out, so how do I build this relationship? And one of the great things is in the personas, you know what they care about. You know who they are. You actually understand them as a person so that you can start creating messages. You can send them an email, social media, whatever it is, but your interactions with them kind of throughout. And one of the things that we've seen a couple companies do very well is they connect and they create specific content for people that are already customers. They're not trying to get them to convert on something new. They're not trying to get them to buy another thing. They're trying to make sure that they built a long, steady relationship with that person. And one of the things, if you don't have a relationship, at some point, whatever you've asked them to do, you become a substitute. So the next time someone else asks them to do something very similar, if they don't have a relationship with you, you're a substitute. Why don't I just go over here to Bob? Why don't I go over here to Nancy over here? They're asking me to do the same thing. I don't have a relationship with you. At this point, I could care less about what you're offering. Whereas with Beau, the Starbucks person, he comes in and he says, oh, I got your drink. You're taken care of. There's a relationship being built there that helps not only keep the person a part of your ecosystem or your family or whatever you want to kind of talk about, but they also get into the point where they start promoting you. Like Beau talking about Starbucks and that. So that's a great example of him being won over. The relationship has been built by the company to affect him and kind of carry out that. One of the things when I talked about personas earlier, your personas don't end ever. So you're constantly talking with people who are your current customers, you're interviewing them, you're trying to figure out what makes them tick so that when you're building this relationship, you can speak into the values that they care about, the things that they truly want and need. So that's where the building the relationship comes in. You're trying to make it so that they can't kind of live without you. And that's where the human-centered design comes in, because you want to be a part of their lives. You're not just creating something and hoping that they use it and then, oh well, you know, I got the conversion, they bought my product, they're coming to my school. That's not where you want to end up. You want to build a relationship with them and have that actually be meaningful so that the next time they come to make that same type of decision or someone asks them about, hey, I made this decision, I'm thinking about going here, I'm thinking about purchasing this, what do you think? They're able to speak from the experience, the relationship that you've built and say, yes, I know that company, I know that product, I know that school. They care about you as an individual, as a human. They're not just a number to them. They're not saying, like Starbucks, they could easily say, number 25, right? You've gone to restaurants where they said that, or your order's up, number 64. No, they're speaking to Beau and saying, hey, I've got Beau's drink. So that's kind of the building a relationship part.
There's nothing inherently wrong with saying a number. Like I could think of like In-N-Out. I feel like they have radical customer service. Number one, because they know who they are and they pay their people on average really well for that industry, and they are grateful to be there. Number two, they in their hiring process, when I come there, they're always super friendly. Chick-fil-A also, I think they do the name thing. Yeah, they do the name thing. Sometimes they're a little bit too friendly for me, but that's my own jaded heart. But yeah, Chick-fil-A is another good example. And so this not only has ramifications in how you guys are communicating in all your respective departments to who you're trying to communicate to. I've also seen this be really effective among teams. You're launching an initiative, you're launching a new product. You're involving and you know who you're dealing with. So I deal with developers and designers, and those are probably the two most like polar opposite in terms of just stereotype. Super exacting, and then creative in their own way, developers, but really, more feeling, and I just want to feel like loved through this process, sort of thing. And if we approach projects and I don't account for that, I don't say, hey, this is who. Not only am I accounting for our inner relationship as we launch this, but also, hey guys, here is what we're trying to do with this. Here's the person we're trying to reach. We're not just building an app in the App Store. Here is the person. The designers, developers, strategy people, everyone could go like, okay, that's who we're trying to reach. Here's the pain that this person experiences, very broadly. Oh, okay, I get it. Everyone could get that. Here is what we're going to try to build at solving this pain. Rather than, guys, here's scope work. We have 300 hours to do this project. You're going to do design. I'll give you mock-ups here. You're going to blah, blah, blah. Here's the miles. Here, let's set up all the stuff. That's a narrow-sighted way, not human-centered way to approach projects. And so this could have, also as you guys are, doing projects internally, this could help out as well. So I have seen this pretty much revolutionize how the company I work for, Monk, has these conversations. I've been a part of a lot of conversations that aren't that way, and I've been a part of conversations that we're trying to reach this persona with this thing. We're trying to solve this. They have this huge pain. Way different conversation. And so that concludes our presentation. I just figured we'd open it up to some Q&A with the Cookie Monster, because I like him. If anybody had any feedback or any questions about anything we talked about, feel free.
Talked about the hobbies, social media, kids, blah, 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 around the personas. How do you gather and research that information?
There's actually a couple different ways. So there's, I want to say, 4 main ways. The first is you could send out a survey. So you have a database of your current customers or potential customers. You send out a survey. And in that survey, you gain information and insight into them. One of the other things is to just look at the trends, like the people that are coming to you and interact. So let me back that up. It's the people that on your campus or at your company that they interact with. They can start speaking into, I just talked with a mom of 3. She was, she has this pain point. We need to solve this problem. So there's the customer interaction. So the people that the potential client interacts with can provide insight. And that's where this document isn't, when you're building your personas, it's not something that's finished. It's constantly being improved by every interaction that people have. So if they start to see a trend where, I'm getting a lot of these people, and they're all art directors. We don't really serve art directors, do we? Well, let's build that out. Let's find out what art directors need, want, or we've got new students coming in, and I keep hearing that there's this thing called Twitter. Okay, they're on that Twitter. They're like, oh yeah, here's my hashtag, here's my @handle. So you can build, the next thing is forms on your website or however you collect information. So in that you can ask kind of clarifying questions. What is your biggest pain point in this area? What is your, give us your Twitter handle when they sign up for an event. And then you tweet at them, and you can see from that, they give, in the Twitter feed, you can look at their bio. And from that, you can get information, because they'll say, I'm a photographer, I'm a mother of 2. So, there's some real information that they're willing to give out, because that's who they identify as. So that's 1, 2, 3. The last one is in-person interviews or phone calls. You set up a series of questions, and you call them, and you ask them. You get into the hobbies, and you're like, oh, how do I ask them about a hobby? Well, ask them, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Or you share, oh, I was out this weekend, and I went bike riding. What'd you do? And you start getting that personal touch, so that you're not just asking them how many widgets are in your company or how many people work for you. So that's where you start building into the in-person interviews. You can also ask open-ended questions, and they'll describe their pain points, what they're hoping, what their goals are, what their wishes are. We've also actually created a document that you guys can download after this. We'll give you the link later. And it kind of talks about how to build out a persona. And it's got a worksheet in there and kind of goes through what it looks like.
Yeah, so there are a lot of good tools as well. It doesn't substitute the face-to-face surveys, in-person interviews. A lot of things that you could do, like on capture forms for just a quick ask. Like what is your role? What do you do? Things like that. If you're talking about interactive, then there's also tools that the simple thing is, if you just want to check demographics out, there's Google Analytics has a demographics tool that's free that you can use. You could see where people are coming from, what device they're coming from, if you're looking more like granular technology as well.
We also use Experian data. Well, it's not very expensive for mass types of work, not so much the personalization, but that's interesting.
Okay.
I work here at Biola for a new department, Ives Online, so we're dealing with a lot of online students, and specifically targeting people who don't have a connection to Biola currently. What are some specific ways when reaching out to students who might not even know about the campus or very not connected currently, that make people feel really comfortable when they're looking for something like that? So specific things on the site that you guys have found make people that first impression really good, and reaching out, is there better ways than others, like emails versus social media, things like that?
Yeah, I'd say.
Oh yeah, just kind of go into that. When you have the personas, or you've interviewed some people that have already been through that process, so they're signed up, they're online students, you can ask questions like, how did you learn about us? What was effective communication with you? So we do this sometimes when we're on site with a church or an organization. We'll send out a survey. It's like, what is the most effective way to communicate with you? And then we give them 6 options: email, newsletter, social media. And it's pretty telling, because that's your ideal demographic, because they've already purchased or are part of your coming to Biola. So if you can start seeing kind of where are they getting their information? Are there websites that you could purchase ads on that type of website to present that material? Are there communities online that a lot of these people are engaged in? So with that, is there a Google Plus community that we've seen a bunch of our people are involved in that we can get in and start speaking to. So it's really coming at it from understanding who you're already serving and who you want to serve, and finding out where they are to connect with that. And Beau might have some other stuff to share.
No, that's great. And I think once you have that locked down, like this is the person, here's our ideal, here's priority number one, and then you also have the pathway, so you're not trying to do everything on the homepage for this person. You're simply trying to get them to do one low barrier thing. And so let's reorient around, and I'm not saying you just have one thing on that. So you have to account for other stages. But as you're thinking through, okay, on the homepage, who is our primary audience for the homepage? This person. Who is our secondary? This. Third. Persona. This. Okay, for this one, primary number one, now we could get to designing content around that person. So whether that's what kind of imagery, for this person, are they? I was working with another school, and they were in the mountains, and a lot of they through working through personas, they said a lot of people just really love the mountains and the fresh air and like. So I was like, it wouldn't really make sense to just have pictures of your campus all over. Maybe you want to incorporate some imagery of the surroundings, the environment they're going to be in. And so that's not a blanket, thing, do the surroundings. But that is, they had an understanding. This is a 25 to 30-year-old male that is considering seminary. They have these criteria. They want to have a balance between their studies and outdoor stuff. So let's do that. So if we know that's our primary, the homepage should reflect that. And I'm not saying it's busy with all that stuff, but it incorporates pieces of content that help that serve that person. Good.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Good enough. Yeah.
You mentioned an example of a company that got rid of 75% of their content.
Mm-hmm.
But Jakob Nielsen says that we should still retain old content in case there are links to it. So are you talking about just merely rearranging the organization, or actually literally deleting?
Yeah, so in that, with Jakob Nielsen, I don't think he was referring to like 5-year-old events. You don't really, he was referring to past events that you can't RSVP for. Okay, so that would be maybe in just what I see, if the priority is retaining some of that at the expense of your current people that won't ever get access to that data, then I would, so that would be, far be it from me to disagree with Jakob Nielsen, but I've seen it to where it is this hoarder mentality, and I don't think he would advocate for going to a site and you have crazy stuff going on. Mainly what we discovered in that particular project was a good example was they had crazy nav tree, things were 4 or 5 levels deep. I did an analytics review and I said about 80% of your pages have gotten one hit in the past year. So no one's using it. And if it's at the expense of every single person coming into your organization right now, then we got to make a decision. Like, do you want to keep this stuff or do you want to? So I do, like for things like media archives and things that people need a rich historical media, I wouldn't advocate getting rid of that because a lot of that stuff is still very valuable. I'm talking about like, okay, we had we had some turnover. We don't even do anything like that anymore. And this is outdated and we haven't touched it. We have a blog that we haven't updated in 2 years. And we're sending people to this blog, and what kind of impression do the people get that we're, so hopefully that's a little helpful. So that's the not important stuff we're cutting out.
Yeah, and kind of speaking into that, I think that specific company had 203 navigation items. And when we went through it, they ended up with about 45. And it was clear what the pathways were for the next people. So that it was, the old content that they were cutting, it wasn't like they were losing anything. You were gaining focus, similar to the jam story. You were getting them the important information that they needed. So it wasn't like we were cutting drastically their admissions page. And there was also, I might be wrong, but content was rewritten to take out. So when we talk about, they had pages of text, and now we're down to 2 or 3 lines, bullet points. So all the stuff that Jakob Nielsen talks about that makes it easy to read web content, that's kind of where they went with their content. I can speak into this. Actually, I managed a website, and we had 430 links on the homepage. Beau saw this and he laughed at me. So what we were doing was the hoarder mentality. We weren't providing any value to a person individually. We were just, hey, this is Shotgun. Hopefully you click on one of these links and then we can work with you down. We didn't even have that. You clicked on that, you went to this page, and good luck. You're on your own. The sky's the limit. Drop you out in the wilderness. Have fun trying to get back to home base.
Funny example of maybe not be so funny to you guys, but it was funny to me. Have you guys heard of the Village Church in Dallas? Matt Chandler's church. So he's a really well-known preacher, but he had this this thing that's now, and we actually, they're one of our clients, but he had this decision that said, any sermons prior to 2006, delete them off our website because of youthful angst and in my sermons during that time. So he basically got rid of every single sermon prior to 2006. I don't know why that just came out. I was thinking about it. Those are some pretty cool sermons, though. Yeah.
What I think I've experienced with churches with cutting out content is that there's a lot of content that they usually put on websites that I look at and I'm like, well, maybe you can just email this to the 6 people that you put it up for and keep this space open. Or maybe you can use social media. I think there's so many channels of communicating that, especially for churches, that not everything has to end up on the website.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah. And that comes with determining, okay, on our priority audience, what is, this scuba diving ministry that has like 5 people in it. That, not to slight them and say that they shouldn't have anything, but do they need, like, does this department, does this ministry need a huge banner ad on the homepage that's someone scuba diving? No, not really. That's not what this piece of content, that's not the primary audience for this.
And the people that are already engaged in your ministry, you have their contact, you have their address, so many ways to get in touch with them.
Yep.
Why clutter that space when it's one of the only places you get to
Effectively, yep. It has good applications for churches and non-churches. Anything else you guys can think of? Good? Yeah.
So we were actually having this discussion yesterday, and maybe get your thoughts on it. Like, maybe there's a difference between larger churches and smaller churches and how you approach some of this stuff. But what is your thoughts on leveraging, like, say, Facebook for using events and managing stuff, and then just pulling in, using a hook to kind of like list it on your website, but really you're using say like a social media outlet like that that's already got a lot of people listed to, actually post a lot of your events and schedules, people are doing that.
Yeah.
As opposed to having it hosted entirely on a unique system within your website. Is there a
Yeah.
value to one or the other? Is there a scalability issue where it's, you get to a certain, below a certain size that's valuable and above a certain size it's not? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it goes to right back to the persona talk. Is the people that use social media are not brand new people that have never heard of your church or your organization. These very likely, there are probably some that are exposed to you in that way, but they're not. How could they like you and be fans of you if they've never heard of you yet? And so usually what we're seeing is the use of social media for managing small groups, managing event stuff. That's more of a regular attender persona than it is the new person. And very similar to when mobile started coming out and people were building mobile, mobile curated versions of sites. They weren't responsive yet. That was the first kind of early attempt to get mobile, and then apps came in, and a lot of organizations were thinking, and just the church example too. A lot of churches were saying, we'll just get an app to handle mobile. Well, if a newcomer if someone who's never been to your church is going to your website, you're calling them to download an app to get to where you meet and when you meet, and they got to go to the app store and wait to that's a pretty big ask for them to do that. So, but that was this mentality of let's just throw, it's mobile, it'll solve mobile. No, it'll only solve one persona in mobile. It'll solve the regular. It may be supplementary content for regular people and engaged people, but new, no, it's not. And so a lot of this stuff is also the beauty of the digital is we can track all this stuff. We can see when they get to this page that mobile bounce rate is like 75%. And 7 out of 10 people are leaving immediately. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you're interested in analytics, that bundle of resources that I talked about, I've included a little way to do quarterly web analytics reviews, and it talks about some of the key things that you would need to do. So when you're talking about Facebook and using it, and is there a certain size, there's also this idea of paid and rented media. So Facebook, you're renting. You don't own that space. At any point in time, they could cut your viewership down tremendously. So I think of it for the church website that I managed. We were consistently seeing that it was seen by 270 people, and that was our regular number. Facebook made an algorithm change, and that dropped to 27 people. 27 people on a regular basis, from 200 to 27. And I'm sitting there thinking, how the heck do I use this? How do I help and get the word out if only 27 people are seeing this compared to the 200 that used to see it? So there's the idea of owned media, so that would be your website, and rented space, so social media, that kind of thing. So you've got to balance that, because they can change, like Facebook in a couple of days is going to change their profile pages. Did anybody know that? No. Their business pages are going to change as well. So there's different, the business pages are changing. Let me change that. Business pages are changing. They're not changing their profile. Twitter just changed their profile. So how you communicate, if you're using those avenues that you don't own, that you don't control, is always going to change. It's always going to be in flux. So you need to be careful with that. So paid and rented media, if you look online, you can see articles back and forth about the benefits, the non-benefits of it. So, but I prefer something that I own, I can control, and I can direct people to from social media. So, personal choice, but just bad experience.
Talk about analytics. How do you get your clients to measure their success? A simple measurement.
Yeah, sound like a broken record, but it also goes down to the personas. So let's have a holistic view of what success looks like. Is it this for this persona, this conversion form initially, it's this next, it's this. And then the tough thing about Google Analytics, and I've been, I think I spend like 3 or 4 hours a day in it, is for most people, it's a mass of raw quantitative data, and they don't have the time in the day to be an expert in creating custom segments, installing event scripts, and doing all this stuff that actually helps provide a qualitative measurement. So short of that, there are some broad things you can look at. Top traffic content, where traffic is coming from, how some health indicators on that'll give you some sort of some idea, barometer of success. The bounce rates and things like that. Until you actually take the next step and say, based on our personas, when someone clicks here, that is a very valuable thing to us. We want to measure this page, measure who's coming there, measure the time they're there, measure where they're going on it, and then you could start to get into some really advanced things like first, it's not advanced, but first, event tracking success. So whenever you go beyond just the content to the click, to the conversion, then you could start looking at that content based on that persona and start running A/B tests, start tailoring, tweaking content up, doing different things. But GA is a hard, if you don't have a lot of training to install all of the measurement points and the events, it will always be like a big raw data dump. They're getting a lot better, I think, but there's a couple other tools that can help too.
Yeah, I can kind of speak into that as well. When I was working in the church, I was very worried about certain pages, and so I pretty much researched Google Analytics. I was looking for what are the key indicators, and usually it's time on site. So how long is someone actually visiting this page? So you could have 150 visitors, but if they're only spending 5 seconds on that page, is it effective? Something on that page isn't working. So you look at your time on site, sit down, put a stopwatch, go ahead, pull up the page, have someone read it, and have the stopwatch go off on what your average number is. This is a little example, but you can see how long someone went through that page. Were they able to read all the copy? Did they get to the final message that we wanted them to get, or are they leaving? So that's just a simple idea, but one of the big things, time on site. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree, it's a data dump. And if you start doing the tracking of events, I tracked downloads of PDF files. So someone clicks on a PDF file, it triggered a virtual page view, and I knew how many people had downloaded something on my website. And doing that and wasting 6-7 hours on it, I figured out that it wasn't very effective, because every week we had about the same 27, 26, no matter what we were doing. So it was just a waste of time, but I could get the information if I wanted to. It was all in analytics.
Going once, going twice. I think that were we on time or 5 minutes early? 15 minutes early?
I don't know.
Wow, we gotta get more questions. I'm just kidding. No more questions. I'll open it back up. Okay, good. All right, thanks, guys. We'll be here hanging out if you want to talk, chat.
Yeah. And then the link right up there, monk.so Biola Digital. If you go to that website, there's a list of resources, how to build personas, a touch point audit. So if you wanted to download that, it's an Excel file that you can go ahead and start mapping out some of your touch points. And then there's how to do web analytics. It's coming at it from a church perspective, but those are key indicators, so you can look at those and get a good idea no matter what industry you're in. I dive into analytics and I show you where the reports actually are. So if you're wondering, how do I get into analytics? How do I find this information? It kind of maps it out. So, yeah. They're short little video clips, so I think it's 5 minutes for each one. So you can watch one, watch however you want to do it.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.